I look at my situation now and how fortunate I think, God's hand was really in me being in the class that I'm in now at my school where I'm at, with the friends that I have and so on and so forth. It's just, it's awesome to see. And I think that a similar experience would probably happen in anybody else's case too. Yeah, I mean, in terms of delaying college, never a big deal. It really is not. No matter where you go either, it wouldn't matter. Yeah, it's a good point. But my own personal experience, Ellie, you can go to the next one. I went through a program called Radical Journey, which is through Mennonite Mission Network. And obviously that is maybe a familiar organization to you guys. But that was just something that was really accessible and tangible for me, something I knew a lot about. And so I chose Radical Journey. It's a program for 18 to 25-year-olds. And it lasts 11 months, and you have a month of discipleship training in an urban location in the United States, and then you are sent off to your, well, country where you're going. And so we were scheduled to go to Bolivia, but visa problems had us sent to Paraguay, and it was kind of a really pleasant surprise. And so the summer after I graduated in August, 2011, I went to Chicago. Emily, if you want to the next one. We spent roughly a couple weeks in Chicago doing different types of training, learning what it would mean to be a white person going into a different culture, what those implications were, learning about our specific culture, learning about public transportation, learning about the language, and then we would have time specifically as a team. Emily, if you want to go to the next one then. This is our team. And we were from all across the country. It was pretty great. This is Tim, Tim, he was from Kansas. Katie, she was from Arizona. Riley in the middle was from Colorado. That's Kara, she's from Missouri. And this guy's name is Isaac. He was going to be our team leader. He's from Kansas as well, but he actually ended up going to Bolivia instead of Paraguay, and then myself. And so we had a team of 5 that we went with to Paraguay. And we lived all over the city. Emily, if you want to go just back one really quick. Oh. Celery. One more. Yeah, and so this is the country of Paraguay. This is where we live, Asuncion. We flew into Bolivia, and then we spent a couple weeks in Argentina to solve our visa problems. And so it was really cool to be able to experience different countries along with the entire time that we were in Paraguay.
So you didn't find out till when that you weren't going to?
Correct. We were scheduled to fly out to Bolivia, I think it was like September the 8th of that year. And we found out on September 5th, we had been planning through all of our training that we were going to Bolivia. I met my host sister over Skype. I knew the family who I was going to be staying with. We were preparing for specifically Bolivian culture. We found out 3 days before we were going to leave on our flight that through various different things with the government that Bolivia was not going to allow us to enter the country. And so Mennonite Mission Network had to kind of scramble for a couple of days and figure out what they were going to do with us. They were considering keeping us home for a couple more weeks and sending us late, but they had a contact who was in Argentina, and we're going to look at a couple pictures of that group later. So we spent 2 weeks in Argentina before we actually got to Paraguay. And that was kind of just a really crazy whirlwind time, and we had to do, this was when we had no Spanish at all pretty much, or the Spanish that we had from the classroom we were trying to transfer it over. So this is when me and my only other teammate who had some Spanish experience really were able to use that and get our feet wet and make a fool of ourselves, but also at the same time be able to do that in a way where we got the visas we needed to get to Paraguay, which was crazy. And yeah. I think you just want to go to the next one then. So after spending 2 weeks in Argentina with a church there and living in just really crazy situation, we lived in a ghetto outside of Buenos Aires. It was a really poor neighborhood, but it was also a really awesome experience because you've never seen more hospitable people in your life. But anyway, then we eventually finally got over to Paraguay, and this is my host family. These are the people who I lived with for the entirety of the time when I was there. My host dad is the one next to me there on the left. His name is Feliciano Ortega. This is the Ortega family. This is the oldest son next to him. That's Gustavo with long hair. He is wow, he's 15 now, and that's his wife, Rosa, well, Feliciano's wife, Rosa. She was my host mom, should clarify that. And then that's their youngest son, Augusto, and he's 7. Now he's 7. He was loads of trouble. But yeah, we lived on, and I'll show you hopefully some pictures. I'm not sure if I have pictures of the house or not. Emily, can we go to the next one? Oh yeah, I didn't put pictures in the house, but we lived in kind of this neighborhood. It was kind of tucked away. Very few of the roads are like paved macadam. We lived kind of back in what we would think of to be like a cul-de-sac. Not really like a cul-de-sac, but it was kind of cool. My room was open air basically. It was made of bricks and it was open to the elements. It was kind of awesome. So that was trouble during like really heavy rains and stuff, but it was really humbling to live with them. They were really my mom, my dad, and my brothers for the entirety of the time. They were people who taught me how to speak Spanish, basically. They had the most grace with me, and they also taught me how to speak a little bit of, well, I mean, I can't really speak that now, but they tried to teach me how to speak Guarani, which is the indigenous language of Paraguay. And then it was here, this is where I worked, Alto Refugio, a high refuge. This was in like Center City, Asuncion, and it was a ministry that helped people, like I said earlier, with who were dealing with HIV/AIDS. Yeah, we can see some pictures of this. What I did there, this is the building where I worked. I was basically an odds and ends person. I did whatever was needed that given day. Yeah, you can go to the next one. Next one. And there we go. A lot of my time was spent working with the youth that they had there, as well as the little kids. This is their third floor is this really big open space for the kids to go. And the kids were usually not the ones who had HIV, it was their parents, and they would bring their kids there while they would go to the doctor's office, or while they would get counseling, or be eating, or getting meds, or whatever it is. And so it was Tim, the guy on my team, and I who worked here, and we spent the majority of our time in this room with the kids, and if we go to the next one. And we also, that's a really good quality picture. But what we have here is, if we weren't up with the kids, we were packing food. What the ministry did is that they would receive food donations from organizations all across the city in bulk. And we would take the bulk food and put it into little plastic bags, and then they would give out basically rations for the week to families, especially moms who would come in. Who could not necessarily afford all these different staples for their home. And so we would have things like flour, sugar, coffee, pasta, like pasta's right here, but just a bunch of different things that we would just kind of bag and get ready for them and then hand it out to them. We would spend a lot of time in the kitchen as well. And then, like I said, the youth group as well. So these guys are a little bit older than the kids who were upstairs, but these are like we would think like junior high, senior high aged kids, and there was only a few of them really throughout the whole year. It was like 3 to 5, and if they brought friends, then it'd be more. But they would come after school, and it's really interesting because the ministry themselves would want the kids to come in to keep them off the streets really, because that's where they would get tempted to go into drugs or prostitution, which was just like a real way of making money. And so they would come to Alto, and we would do, English. We would teach them English. We would, do activities with them. We would go to parks, play sports, so on and so forth. Or we would sit around and just talk and drink mate, and we'll see mate in a little bit, I think, with cultural pictures. But yeah. That was, and for example, this was another property that Alto owned. It was a hotel for battered mothers. So it was mothers who were affected by HIV, who couldn't live in their current living situation because of their boyfriend or their husband or whatever. They would come and live at this hotel, and it used to be a hotel anyway, and now it's this home. And so we would take the kids here, and they had stuff for, obviously they had like games, and they had a pool and stuff. So I mean, if you were sure to keep going, it's just stuff we would do with them. Another one of my responsibilities when I was there was they would have like an educational team go out to high schools in the area, and they would give educational like seminars really, or assemblies, I guess you could say, on HIV/AIDS, because a lot of people were uninformed and they didn't understand exactly what HIV was. And so this was kind of an opportunity not only for students to get educated about, you know, how HIV is transferred, or what it, you know, would mean to relate to somebody with HIV, because there's a lot of discrimination. Socially, if you have HIV, you're a leper, you're an outcast.
Would you say that HIV/AIDS there is a result of sexual contact, or is it drug, dirty needles, or?
It would probably be both. It's definitely both. I think in the area, the neighborhood where I was, it would definitely be more accounted to drugs than it would be to sex. But I mean, it was really all of those things, depending on the neighborhood where Alto is in is kind of like, you know, ground zero for where it is. There's the drug rehab center down the street, and then there's Alto, and then there's the AIDS hospital, all in the same block. And then the neighborhoods that surround that are really the neighborhoods that need those ministries the most. And, you know, these are places where, you know, Alto would have, you know, policies for, we wouldn't be able to have people who were drunk or who were high coming in. We would have to serve them outside or stuff like that, because it was just something you would see every single day. And it was pretty commonplace. But yeah, it was definitely probably more drugs than anything else. But anyway, like assemblies, school students would bring in, again, like canned goods, stuff that we could package up and give to families. They would kind of trade us. We would, you know, put on the assembly for them, and they would give us the stuff to take back. And that was a cool way not only to educate them, but to kind of build relationships with them too, because you would then see students who were involved in these assemblies and who helped put them on, would then come and volunteer at Alto sometime throughout the year, which was really, that was kind of powerful to see that, because they were public schools, and so they would not be put on, like, it wouldn't be like an administrator from the school saying like, oh, we'd love to have Alto come in and talk and educate our students. It would be student driven. It would be like, they would go to the principal and say, let's have an assembly, we want this group to come in, this is what we want, which is a lot different than what we have here, obviously. But yeah, it was kind of cool to see those relationships come to fruition throughout the year. This is the director. He was an interesting fellow. He's actually German. Well, excuse me, he's American. His wife is Canadian, but they are very heavily influenced by German culture. And what you have in Paraguay is, basically there's two cultures kind of clashing. It's the German culture and the indigenous Paraguayan culture coming together. And you have the social aspect of that is the Germans are very wealthy, they own a lot of the businesses, and economically and financially they're on top, I guess you could say, whereas the indigenous Paraguayans own a lot of the smaller businesses. They kind of make their own way, do a lot of entrepreneurship on the street, whether it's through like carts or selling food or stuff like that. I mean, they also own businesses as well, but they're just not as prominent in terms of finances, in terms of the German people. There's just so much fewer German people too. So there's racial tension, there's economic tension between these two groups. And so to have a director of an AIDS ministry where 99% of the patients are going to be of Paraguayan descent, and he is of German descent, there's barriers to cross there. But if there's one person who I've ever met who would be able to do it, it'd be this guy. He's just a very humble man. His name's David Schmidt. Clearly an American name. But yeah, he would frequently bring out his guitar, and the man is, he's a prolific songwriter for songs that have about 3 chords in them and are about 30 seconds long. And they're all about Bible verses. The man has like 3 chords of the Bible memorized through song. And he would utilize that with the kids, with the adults. It was endless in a good way. And he was just an awesome dude. This guy's name was Samuel. It's Tim and I. We would work with him. Classic thumbs up was just kind of, we didn't know how to speak. It's really interesting. When you don't know how to speak a language, you speak through gestures, through the tone of your voice. Like we could speak something in English, but how we would say it would communicate what we were trying to get across. And that would kind of be the growing pains before we knew how to speak Spanish, and so this was kind of our joke. You know, towards the end of the year when we knew we could actually speak with him, he would always kind of make fun of us, give us a thumbs up, to be like, when he would be saying yes. He was a smart aleck. But he would help us, we would help him with the website. You can, yeah, we worked on translating publications. Tim worked on the website and stuff like that to kind of stylize and format their website to be more current, and for their English on the website to be something that American or Canadian or North American donors would be able to like really understand and like grasp well. Like, it was not broken English, but it was just, they used terms or they had verbiage that wasn't like 100% spot on. So that was part of our job, was to kind of edit and look at that and help them out in that way. What we see here in this, again, beautiful photo, is, I got these off the website. They would have, twice a week, they would have a clothing sale. And this is like Salval or like, you know, on steroids, because they would be selling them for like 5, 10, 15 cents. Some of these clothes, and they would have clothing donated to them all the time. And so if we were with the kids and we were in the kitchen, we would be folding and sorting clothes, and we were setting up this, which they would have, again, twice a week. And that was just a really cool opportunity for them to, again, relate with people who would come from across the city to this kind of open market sort of time, I guess, they had during the week, and relate people who had HIV with people who did not, and not only educate those people and kind of work at fighting against discrimination in that way, but also build relationships with whether it's business owners or donors or whatever. This was a powerful way for the organization to kind of work at outreach. I mentioned earlier that they had another property. This was the home for battered mothers that was donated to them in December 2010. Tim, the guy who I worked with myself, worked a lot here in terms of maintenance and upkeep, and yeah, we spent a lot of time like landscaping at this property, which was really a nice change of pace, I guess, but also difficult too, because the weather for much of the time was like 110 degrees with 1,000% humidity, which, I mean, you get used to it after a while, but thank goodness they had a pool, I guess we'll put it that way. And then a couple of these are just like pictures of the surrounding neighborhood around Alto, where they're at. Kind of gives you an idea of what this is like my walk to work, for example. Alto would be up, if you can see that yellow truck there on the street, right there is where Alto is. But you can just see it's kind of, they have like a fabrics factory here, and that's about it in terms of what's on this side of the block besides Alto. You'll see another picture here. Like, this is the property that's right next to us, and it's kind of more modern looking, with like that open glass front there. They want to buy this property, and it's like one of their fundraisers right now. They're trying to raise funds to buy this off of people who own it, so that they can extend. Right now they're at their maximum capacity in terms of the amount of people that they have in there on a daily basis, and they just need more space, whether it's for the clothing sale or whether it's for you know, they have like group therapy sort of they do every day. They would want to do it in a space like this. And then this kind of, I think, I took this picture, I'm not sure what possessed me to take this picture when I was there, but this kind of, I think, was me saying that, like, this is, Paraguay is a second world country, which it's not a third world country in that it's not totally impoverished. This was kind of, I guess, a more Americanized look at something that was right down the street from Alto. Like, this is something we would see every day, but this is kind of a Spanish version of that. Which is to say that that's a South American country that's not specifically in Paraguay, but the culture we were in was really interesting, because you would have these polar extremes of, like, you would see things that are very, very American, or things that are very, very Paraguayan, and then you'd have very, very rich and very, very poor. And just kind of those four extremes were interesting to navigate throughout the whole year. And then public transportation. This was the bus that I took like every morning to work. And often how that would work would be hanging off the like railing on the side of the bus, not actually being inside of it, because you'd have a bus with 24, 32 seats and like 55 or 75 people on it. Which was both the most fun and the scariest moments of my life at like one time. Because like, you can't really see it, there's like a step there on the side, and you would be with 4 or 5 people hanging onto that one little like railing here, and you'd have 1 foot, that's about it, that you could fit on there. And so it was, yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking. And then this, I mean, I spoke earlier about how the different, classes, you have German classes and Paraguayan classes. This was very typical for a Paraguayan family to have a horse and a cart, and to, for example, a family where the father might go away to work all day. In this case, it's not the case, but you'd have a mother and their kids going around collecting recyclable materials and then trading them in at the end of the day. They'd fill the car with recyclable materials or trash, and then trade that in for a small sum at the end of the day. And that would be how they sustain themselves over the course of a week. Yeah. And then a few of these are more cultural things. What you have here, this was a really touristy way to kind of bring people in, but what I really wanted to illustrate here was, it's a thermos is what he's writing on there. He's burning that into the leather. But like leather, working with leather and woodwork are really, and also it's called, well, it's working with silk too, but are all really important parts of like indigenous Paraguayan culture. And so this is, they call it equipment, but it's like your equipment for mate. And like, can we go to the next picture? I think this is it. Yeah, it is. Here are my brothers again. But that's the other end of that. Like you would pour water into that cup, or it's called a guampa, and then you have your bombilla, which is the straw, and then inside would be, it looks like loose leaf tea. And basically you pour water over that, and it's like a drink that you have all the time. In the morning you drink it hot, in the afternoon and the evening we drink it cold, and this is a staple. Everyone has this, every single person, and they do it all the time. It's more common than water, I'm pretty sure. It is water, but this is what they do. They sit in, the way it would be for like right now, if we were to do this, there would be like the pourer, and then the pourer would pour for everyone, and we would pass it around the circle, and you would finish it and give it back to me, and then we'd go around the circle, and they just talk over this. This is like their tea time, except they have tea time 1,000 times a day. And it's really interesting because it kind of demonstrates the difference between warm weather culture and cold weather culture. We're definitely cold weather culture here. Taking that kind of time in our culture and pausing that long to appreciate just conversation with people, we don't have that. We run on a very regimented schedule. When the bell rings, we're gone. When it rings again, we have to be in class, sit down, shut up, and here's class. We're going to do this now. We have to be at work on time or we get fired. We have to, when we say we're going to meet somebody at 12 o'clock, we meet them at 12 o'clock or maybe they're 5 minutes early. In Paraguay, you meet somebody at 12 o'clock, you'll see them at 1 o'clock. And that's like, you expect that. So for an American, I'd say, I'll see you at 12 and I'll show up at 1 and we're all getting there at the same time. It's beautiful. But that's just the way that it works because it's much more relationship based in the warm weather cultures than it is schedule based or, not achievement, but what's the word? Event or structure based than it is here. And so mate is a huge part of that. Again, yeah, I spoke earlier about how we spent some time in Argentina. Our visas in Paraguay lasted 90 days at a time, and so we had to leave the country 3 times throughout our 11 months there to renew our visas, and so we spent time in Argentina again with people who we met before. We also went to Uruguay, which I'll show you in a little bit, and we even got a chance to go back up to Bolivia one time. We got in there eventually, and I got to meet the people who I would have been with. And Isaac, the big hulking dude who was supposed to be on our team too, he took us through there. This is the church who we were with in Argentina. Obviously, it was a lot different from Paraguay because in these ghettos where we were living, the church was like the focal point. I mean, that's where all the kids went. Whether or not they were really into what was going on in youth group or not, this was just like the place to be, which was really cool to see, to have a church be that way. But they were priceless people. I'm trying to think. This is my host mother when we were living there for a couple weeks, and she was the pastor's wife. We lived with the pastor and his 4 kids and 5 kids and a couple grandkids as well. And it was just it was kind of incredible to live in that situation. I don't know if we're going to the next one. I'm not sure if I know one there or not. No. But yeah, we also, you know, like I said, part of seeing the world is part of these gap year experiences. We did have time when we were leaving the country to kind of spend as a team, and we would have, you know, it wasn't like a vacation. We would always have time to get away and do kind of see the country, see lots of different things. One day we went to, well, it was called Crystal Salt Waterfalls, I guess in English would be called. But it was a huge waterfall. I didn't include the whole thing. This is just the bottom of it. It would go, it's not on the next page. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But we got to rappel down this waterfall. One of those cool things we got to do. You know, it's really interesting when you're signing like waivers so that you won't sue these people and it's in a language you don't understand. You're like, yes, fine, I won't sue you. But yeah, another place would be, this was German, I guess, territory. The country of Paraguay, usually in the urban areas, is where the highest concentration of indigenous Paraguayan people are. And then indigenous Paraguayan farmers lived out in the country. But also in the country, it's called the Chaco. That's where a lot of the German population resides. And it looks a lot more, in terms of architecture, in terms of way of life, it's eerily similar, or at least it was for me, eerily similar to how we are here. And so that was really interesting because we made friends who lived in, this place is called Tres Palmas, or 3 palm trees. And this was like a normal, typical house where the Germans live, and you have like their, you know, nice little property there. And then this was a camp where we stayed at one time on another part of the Chaco. But you can see kind of just like how, I don't know, how different that is from, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but how like the foliage itself is different from like in the city and so on and so forth. And it looks just drastically more different than the next one. And then we had time to see the Jesuit ruins. Do you guys watch The Mission here at some point? The movie The Mission? Have you guys seen that? The Jesuits, so it's like the same, you know, people group. We got to see these ruins one time. These were in Paraguay as well. But kind of cool to see and learn the history of. But this is just, again, some examples of things that we did in our time where we had to ourselves as a team. I think there's another picture of this sort of. But, yeah. Oh, and of course soccer. I love soccer. And that's obviously not really loud in comparison to how it was in real life. It was deafening. And this was maybe even more scary than hanging off the side of the bus. And like you can see that these seats aren't filled, but these seats are overfilled. We didn't sit down. And there's, you know, there's like a band that's cheering for your team. And fortunately, we were at one of these games where it was like our team was going to kill the other team, so it wasn't like a big rivalry. But when you have big rivalries, like there's police everywhere. People have like not literal grenades, but like flashbang grenades and fireworks, and they're setting them off in the stands, and things are happening that should not be happening in soccer games, and you're just fearing for your life. I just remember when we left this game, yeah, we sped away, like, and there was gunfire, and it was just like, this is how soccer is meant to be played. It was really cool, but yeah.
You didn't tell your mother till me.
No, I still haven't told my mother. I don't think. A lot of the stories I haven't told my mother or my father. Good to have you. But yeah, so that was kind of really quickly